She came to his door at midnight, soaking wet, bleeding from a cut above her eye, and whispering one sentence that would change everything. "Please don't let him find me here." Caleb Ryder had spent 5 years building a quiet life for his little girl after burying her mother. One knock on a storm-drenched night was about to tear that quiet apart. Stay with me until the end of this story. And if you're watching, drop a comment telling me what city you're from. Hit that like button so I know how far this story has traveled. Let's begin. The rain came down sideways in Millhaven that night, the kind of rain that rattled windows loose in their frames and turned the gutters along Sycamore Street into small, angry rivers. Caleb Ryder stood at the kitchen sink, rinsing a plastic cup decorated with pink unicorns, and watched the water sheet down the glass. The porch light flickered once, steadied, then flickered again. He made a mental note to change the bulb on Saturday. He made a lot of mental notes lately. It was easier than thinking about the things that actually mattered. Behind him, the house was quiet, the way it was always quiet after 8:30. Emma had finally fallen asleep on the third reading of the book about the bear who couldn't find his hat, her small mouth open, her breath catching in that shallow little rhythm 6-year-olds have when they're exhausted but fighting it. He had stood in her doorway for a full minute, the way he did every night, just to make sure she was still breathing. He knew it was a stupid habit. He'd read somewhere that parents of a certain kind never stopped doing it. The kettle clicked off. He poured the water over the tea bag in the mug Emma had painted at day camp last summer. A lopsided green thing that said Dad in glittery letters, half of which had already flaked off into the dishwasher. He didn't really like tea. He drank it because his wife used to make it for him every night at this hour, and somewhere along the way the habit had become the thing itself. Sarah had been gone 4 years and 8 months. He could still tell you, on any given day, the exact number down to the week. He carried the mug to the small desk in the living room corner, sat down, and opened his laptop. The spreadsheet was still up from last night. The invoicing for Henderson's Auto, the shop on Route 9 where he did the books 2 evenings a week, on top of his day job at the lumberyard. 2 jobs. 1 kid. No time. He'd stopped pretending he was going to catch up on sleep a long time ago. The wind pushed against the house, and somewhere out back a garbage can tipped over and rolled across the driveway. Caleb sighed, rubbed the bridge of his nose, and was halfway out of the chair when he heard it. 3 knocks. Fast. Uneven. Too hard. He froze. People didn't knock on his door at 9:40 on a Tuesday. People didn't knock on his door, period. The mailman left packages on the porch. His brother texted before he came by. His neighbor Mrs. Halloran shouted over the fence if she needed something. The only people who knocked were the occasional Jehovah's Witnesses and that one kid selling magazine subscriptions for his school band, and none of them came out in weather like this. The knocks came again. 4 this time. Then a pause. Then a 5th. Softer. Almost like an apology. Caleb moved to the front window and pulled back the curtain with 2 fingers. Through the rain-streaked glass, he could see a shape on the porch. Small, hunched, clutching itself. A woman. That was as much as he could make out. He considered for exactly 2 seconds not opening the door. He had a kid asleep upstairs. He didn't know this person. Millhaven was a small town, but it wasn't the small town his parents had raised him in. There were break-ins on the news now, people pretending to be stranded so they could get inside and grab whatever they could carry. But then the shape on the porch turned, and the porch light caught her face for just a second, and something in Caleb's chest dropped like a stone in a well. She was young, maybe 25, 26, and she was terrified. He'd seen a lot of faces in his 32 years, and he knew the difference between cold and scared, between tired and scared, between drunk and scared. This was scared. Her eyes were too wide. Her jaw was clenched like she was trying to keep her teeth from chattering. But it wasn't just the cold doing that. He unlocked the door and opened it maybe 6 inches. "Yeah?" he said. Not unkind, just careful. "I'm sorry." Her voice was almost gone. Wind and rain and something else had shredded it. "I'm so sorry. I wouldn't knock. My phone's dead and I..." She stopped, swallowed. Her hands were shaking. She wasn't wearing a coat. Her shirt was plastered to her skin. Her jeans were soaked through to the knee. She was holding one arm against her ribs like it hurt. Do you have a phone?" Caleb looked past her, into the yard, into the street. He didn't see a car. He didn't see anyone. "Where'd you come from?" he asked. "Down the road?" She glanced over her shoulder fast and then back at him. "I'm sorry, I'll go. I shouldn't have—" "Hey." He said it quietly, the way he said things to Emma when she was spiraling. "Hey, stop, okay? Just stop." She stopped. She looked at him, and her whole face crumpled for a half-second before she pulled it back together. And that was the thing. That was the thing that got him. The pulling it back together. The way she clenched her jaw and breathed in through her nose and made herself stand up straighter even though she was clearly about to collapse. He opened the door the rest of the way. "Come in. Just come in. You're going to freeze out there." "I can't. I don't want to. My daughter's asleep upstairs. I'm not going to hurt you. Come stand in the entryway at least while you figure out what you need, okay?" She hesitated. He watched her do the math behind her eyes. Yup. Stranger, man, house, door, risk. And then she looked over her shoulder again at the dark street, and whatever was out there was apparently worse than what was in here because she stepped inside. She came in maybe 2 feet and then stopped, like she didn't want to drip on his floor. Water was running off her hair in steady lines. There was a cut above her left eyebrow, not huge, but open, and a thin trail of pink red was running down her temple and into her jaw. "Jesus," Caleb said before he could stop himself. "You're bleeding." "I know." She touched it with 2 fingers and winced. "I slipped. I slipped on the curb." He didn't believe her. He didn't say so. He shut the door behind her and turned the deadbolt without thinking, and when he did, her eyes snapped to the lock and then to his face, and he saw the fear flash again. "I'm locking it because it's cold out and the wind keeps blowing it open," he said, slow. "I'll unlock it if you want me to. It's your call." She stared at him, then slowly she nodded. "No, it's fine. Okay." He took a half step back, giving her space. "Okay, my name's Caleb. Caleb Ryder. I live here with my daughter. Her name's Emma. She's 6. She's upstairs asleep." He said it all flat and even, the way you'd read a form out loud, because he needed her to have information, to have something solid to stand on. "What's your name?" A long pause. Then, "Ivy." "Ivy what?" Another pause, longer. "Just Ivy, for now. Is that okay?" He looked at her for a second. "Yeah, that's okay." He went to the hall closet and pulled down a towel, one of the good ones, not the ratty ones he used for the dog they didn't have anymore, and handed it to her at arm's length. She took it with both hands like he was handing her something holy. "Bathroom's down the hall on the right," he said. "There's a first aid thing under the sink. For the—" He gestured at his own eyebrow. "You want dry clothes? I can grab you a sweatshirt and some sweats. They'll be big. I'm 6'1". "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I'm offering." She looked at him then, really looked at him, for what felt like the first time. Her eyes were gray or green. He couldn't tell in the low light. They were also red-rimmed and exhausted. "Thank you," she said. "Yeah." She went down the hall. He heard the bathroom door click shut. He heard the lock turn and then turn again like she was checking it. Caleb stood in the entryway for a long moment, staring at the small puddle she'd left on the tile. Then he went back to the kitchen and put the kettle on a second time. He made 2 mugs of tea and set them on the coffee table in the living room, along with a sleeve of saltines from the cabinet because he didn't know what else you gave someone in a situation like this. He turned on the lamp in the corner, not the overhead light. The overhead light was harsh. He'd learned from Emma, who hated harsh things, that a lamp was gentler on a person who was already having a hard time. When Ivy came out of the bathroom, she was wearing his gray sweatshirt and a pair of sweatpants rolled 3 times at the ankle. Her hair was wet but combed. The cut above her eye had a butterfly bandage on it. She looked about 15 years old. He gestured to the couch. "Sit, please." She sat on the very edge of it, like she was going to bolt the second anyone raised their voice. He sat in the armchair across from her, not close, not too far, and pushed one of the mugs toward her across the coffee table. "It's just tea. Lipton. Nothing weird." A small, surprised laugh came out of her. Just air, really. Barely a sound. "Nothing weird." "Okay." She wrapped her hands around the mug. Her fingers were still shaking a little. He watched her breathe in the steam and close her eyes for a second, and he thought, she hasn't been warm in a while. He let her have the silence for a minute. He drank his own tea. The rain kept coming. Somewhere upstairs, Emma's nightlight hummed in its outlet. "You said your phone's dead," Caleb said finally. "You want to use mine? Call someone?" "There isn't anyone." It came out flat, like a fact she'd already made peace with a long time ago. He didn't push. "Okay. I'm sorry," she said. "I know how this looks. I know you're a dad, and you have your kid here, and some stranger just showed up on your porch, and I'm Ivy." She stopped. "You don't have to explain it to me tonight," he said. "You don't have to explain it to me at all. If you want to sit here and drink that tea and say nothing for the next 3 hours, that's fine. If you want to tell me you fell off a bike and need a ride to the bus station, that's fine too. You get to decide what I know." She stared at him. Her eyes filled and she looked away fast, toward the dark window. "I haven't slept in 2 days," she said quietly. "I don't think. Couch pulls out. I've got blankets." I can't stay here. I don't know you." "You don't have to stay, but it's midnight and it's raining, and wherever you were going, you can maybe go there tomorrow." A long silence. She took a sip of the tea, her eyes closed again. "Why are you being nice to me?" she asked. Not suspicious, just tired. Caleb thought about it. He could have said a lot of things. He could have told her about Sarah, about the night the hospital had called and he hadn't been able to find his shoes because his hands wouldn't work right, about how a kind nurse had sat with him in a plastic chair for 45 minutes while he tried to form words, how that nurse probably didn't remember him, but he would remember her until the day he died. He could have told her that he had a daughter upstairs, and he spent a lot of nights thinking about what he'd want the world to look like if she ever, God forbid, knocked on a stranger's door in a storm. He said none of it. "Because you needed a door to open," he said, "and mine was the one you came to." She didn't answer, but she took another sip of the tea, and her shoulders came down a full inch from where they'd been, and he figured that was enough. He set her up on the couch, pulled the bed out, fresh sheets from the linen closet, the quilt his mother had made when he'd gotten his first apartment, extra pillow, a glass of water on the side table. He showed her where the bathroom was again, even though she already knew, because sometimes people needed information a second time when they were scared. "Door locks from the inside," he said, about the front door. "Deadbolt too. Chain. I'll be upstairs. Emma's room is the first one on the right if you need anything, and I'm not answering. She's a deep sleeper, so don't worry about waking her up if you have to come get me." "I won't need anything. I'm telling you anyway." She nodded. She was sitting on the pull-out bed now, the quilt around her shoulders. She looked impossibly small in his sweatshirt. He turned to go upstairs, then stopped. "Ivy." "Yeah." "Is someone looking for you?" The question landed hard in the quiet room. She didn't answer right away. She pulled the quilt tighter. "Yes," she said. "Do they know this address?" "No, I don't think so. I don't know. I walked a long way." "Okay." He kept his voice level. "If someone comes to this door tonight, I don't open it, no matter what they say. You understand me? I don't open it. I call the police and I stand between them and this room. That's how this works tonight." Her eyes filled again. She looked down at her hands. "Okay," she whispered. "Get some sleep." He turned off the lamp on his way out. Upstairs, he checked on Emma. She was curled on her side, one arm flung over the stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 2, the one with the ear that had been chewed to a nub. Her hair was in her face. He brushed it back without waking her. "Hey, Bug," he said quietly. "It's fine. Everything's fine." He didn't know if he was saying it to her or to himself. In his own room, he didn't turn on the light. He sat on the edge of the bed, still in his jeans, and listened to the house. He heard the rain. He heard the heater kick on. He heard, eventually, the soft sound of someone crying downstairs, trying to cry quietly, not managing, stopping and starting, the sound of someone who had been holding it in for so long that now it didn't know how to come out in anything but broken pieces. He did not go downstairs. He understood somehow that going downstairs would be the wrong thing. Some crying needed to be done alone, in a room where no one was watching, in a house that had locked its doors against whatever was outside. He lay down on top of the covers, still in his clothes, and didn't sleep for a long time. He was up at 5:40, the way he always was. The rain had stopped. The sky outside the kitchen window was the color of wet concrete. He moved quietly, the way he'd learned to move after Sarah died, the way you moved when there was a kid in the house whose whole world depended on you being okay. The couch was empty. For a bad second, he thought she'd left. Then he saw the quilt folded, not just dropped, but actually folded, in a neat square on the armrest. The sheets stripped off the pullout and stacked on top. The mug from last night washed and sitting upside down on a dish towel in the kitchen. The glass of water empty and rinsed. And her, sitting at his kitchen table with her hands around a fresh mug of coffee, watching him. "I made coffee," she said. "I hope that's okay. I didn't know what you drink." "Coffee is good." His voice came out rougher than he meant. He cleared his throat. "Coffee is great." She watched him pour a cup. She'd put her own wet clothes, clean, he realized. She must have rinsed them out in the bathroom sink, over the back of one of the chairs to dry. The cut on her eyebrow looked better in daylight. Not good. Better. "I'll be gone before your daughter wakes up," she said. I didn't want to leave without... I wanted to say thank you, properly." "Where are you going?" She looked at her coffee. "I don't know yet." He sat down across from her. "Ivy." "Please don't," she said. "Please don't ask me to stay. I can't bring this into your house. You have a kid. You have a life here. I can see it. It's a good life. I'm not going to be the thing that wrecks it." He took a slow breath. "There's a diner on 5th, he said. Opens at 6. They do a pretty decent breakfast. I'll drive you." "You don't have to." "Ivy, I'm going to drive you, because the bus station is on the other side of that diner, and I want to make sure you get there, and not because I don't trust you, but because whatever you're running from is bigger than a walk through a town that doesn't know you." She looked at him for a long time. Her eyes were steady now, in a way they hadn't been last night. There was still fear in them, but underneath the fear was something else, something he hadn't noticed before, a kind of banked fire, a thing that hadn't been put out, just covered. "Okay," she said. Tien. He heard Emma before he saw her, the creak of the third stair from the top, the one he kept meaning to fix. And then her small voice saying, "Daddy?" in that sleepy, confused way she had in the mornings before the world came into focus. Ivy went very still. Emma appeared in the doorway of the kitchen in her pajamas, the ones with the rocket ships, her hair in the shape of the pillow she'd slept on, the stuffed rabbit dangling from one hand. She saw Ivy. She stopped. "Hi," Emma said. "Hi," Ivy said. Her voice was careful. Emma looked at her father. "Who's that?" Caleb had been prepared for this question, or thought he had been, but he hadn't been prepared for how fast the answer came out of him. "This is my friend Ivy. She stayed in the guest bed last night because the rain was bad. She's going to have breakfast with us, and then I'm going to drive her downtown." "Oh." Emma considered this. She crossed the kitchen with her peculiar half-awake walk and climbed into the chair next to Ivy's, holding the rabbit up in front of her face like a shield. "This is Mr. Palm. He's a rabbit." "Hi, Mr. Palm," Ivy said. "He's missing an ear. He doesn't care." "Good for him." Caleb watched his daughter sit there, 2 feet from a stranger, perfectly at ease in the way 6-year-olds were at ease when they had not yet learned the things adults taught them to be afraid of. He watched Ivy's face, the way it softened, the way the tension in her jaw dropped a little, the way she leaned in just slightly when Emma started explaining which of Mr. Palm's ears was the missing one and how he'd lost it. He poured cereal into a blue bowl. He cut up a banana. He got out the milk. His hands moved on the autopilot of the 1,000 mornings he'd done this. But he was watching them, his daughter, and this woman he had met 9 hours ago. And something was moving in him that he didn't have a name for yet. Something that didn't feel like a decision being made so much as a decision being noticed after the fact, already made. "I was supposed to drive her to the bus station," he said quietly, when Emma had slid out of her chair to go find her slippers. "I know," Ivy said. "It's going to be cold today. They said maybe snow by tonight. That's unusual for this time of year." "It is." She wasn't looking at him. "The guest bed isn't actually a guest bed. It's just the pullout. But it's comfortable, I think. I don't know, I haven't slept on it." "Caleb, I'm just saying, if you needed, I don't know, a couple of days to figure out where to go, it wouldn't wreck anything, the life you think I have." Ivy's eyes came up to his. They were gray. He could see now, in the kitchen light, gray like river stones. I have to tell you something, she said, before you offer me anything else. You don't know what you're inviting in. You don't know who's going to come looking. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being honest. Okay. He has money, she said. He has lawyers. He has people who do things for him and don't ask questions. If he finds out I'm here, it won't be a normal kind of problem. It'll be the kind of problem that eats people's lives. Caleb set the milk down. What's his name? I don't want to say it in this house. He nodded, slowly. Okay, he said. Okay, then we don't say it. Not yet. But you stay. For a couple of days. We figure it out. You sleep, you eat, you stop running for a minute. And then we decide what to do next. Because I'm not sending you back out there alone with a dead phone and a face somebody hit. She flinched at that last part. Somebody hit. And he knew in that flinch that he'd been right about the curb. I'm scared, she said very quietly. I know. I'm scared of bringing this to your door. Your daughter... My daughter, Caleb said, just invited you to breakfast and she doesn't do that with many people. I'm going to trust her on this one. She's a better judge of character than I am. A small sound came out of Ivy. Half a laugh, half something else. Emma came back into the kitchen in the wrong slippers, one hers, one his, flopping on her small foot, and announced that Mr. Palm wanted pancakes and not cereal, and that this was a hill Mr. Palm was prepared to die on. Mr. Palm doesn't get a vote, Caleb said. Mr. Palm is a rabbit. Mr. Palm is a wise rabbit. Mr. Palm is a pushy rabbit. Ivy, very quietly, said, I could make pancakes, if you want. If there's... I don't want to... There's mix in the pantry, Caleb said, top shelf, behind the oatmeal. She stood up. She was still wearing his sweatshirt. It hung down past her hips. She walked to the pantry like a woman who was trying to remember how to walk in a kitchen that wasn't being watched. He saw the moment she realized no one was watching. He saw the small release of her shoulders. Emma leaned over the table and whispered in the way 6-year-olds whispered, which was not a whisper at all. Daddy, I like her. Yeah? She has sad eyes, but she's nice. Caleb looked at his daughter. He didn't know where she got these things. Sarah had been like that too, seeing things other people didn't see, naming them out loud before anyone else had the words. It ambushed him sometimes, how much of his wife was still walking around inside his kid. Eat your cereal, Bug, he said. Mr. Palm wants pancakes. Mr. Palm can have a pancake, one pancake, with dignity. Dignity, Emma repeated solemnly. Over by the stove, Ivy had found the mix. She was reading the back of the box. Her hair was almost dry now, pulled back into a knot at the base of her neck. She looked, for just a moment, in that kitchen light, measuring flour into a bowl, like a person who lived somewhere, like a person with a morning. Caleb looked out the window. The clouds were still low. The yard was a mess of wet leaves. Down at the end of the street, a black sedan was idling at the stop sign, brake lights on, a little too long. It turned the corner and was gone. Probably nothing, he thought. He got up to help with the pancakes. The pancakes were lopsided and a little pale in the middle, which Emma declared to be the best kind, and which Ivy accepted with the small, surprised smile of someone who had forgotten what it felt like to have her work praised by anyone at all, let alone by a 6-year-old with syrup on her chin. Caleb ate 3 of them standing up at the counter because he was already running late for the lumberyard, and because sitting down in his own kitchen across from Ivy felt, somehow, like a bigger step than he was ready to take at 7:15 in the morning. He dropped Emma at school on his way in. She waved at Ivy from the passenger side of his truck, her breath fogging the window, and Ivy waved back from the porch in his oversized sweatshirt with her arms wrapped around herself against the cold. The image stayed with Caleb all morning. He thought about it while he was counting 2x4s in the yard. He thought about it while Dale, from receiving, was telling him some long, unfunny story about his brother-in-law's truck. He thought about it in the parking lot at lunch, eating a gas station sandwich in the cab, watching the gray sky and trying to figure out what exactly he had just done. He had left a strange woman alone in his house, a woman whose last name he didn't know, a woman who was being hunted by a man with money and lawyers and apparently a fist. He should have called his brother. He should have called somebody. Instead, he found himself at 12:40 sending a text to a number he had written down on the back of an envelope that morning, a burner phone Ivy had bought for cash at a gas station 3 days ago, the only phone she had left. that said simply, "You okay?" She wrote back almost immediately. "Yes. House is very quiet." He stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed, "There's leftover chili in the fridge. Microwave, not the stove." Stove's temperamental. Okay. He almost put the phone down, then didn't. Ivy. Yes. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to clean. You don't have to earn it. Just rest. There was a long pause. The bubble with the 3 dots appeared and disappeared twice. Finally, "I don't know how to do that." "Try," he wrote back, and put his phone down before he could write anything else. He got home at 5:40 with Emma in tow. A grocery bag of chicken thighs and rice, and the bag of those little shredded carrots Emma would eat if they were raw, but absolutely would not touch if they were cooked. The house smelled like something that wasn't chili. It smelled, he realized as he set the bag on the counter, like bread. "You made bread?" he said. Ivy was at the kitchen table, a book open in front of her. One of his, from the shelf in the living room, a beat-up paperback about the Civil War that he'd been meaning to finish for 3 years. "I made bread," she said. Her face did a complicated thing. "I hope that's okay. I found flour in the pantry and yeast, and I needed something to do with my hands. It smells incredible. It's nothing special. It's just a white loaf. My grandmother taught me." Emma came thundering in from the living room where she had stopped to greet Mr. Palm, who apparently had missed her. "You made bread?" "I did." "Can I have some?" "After dinner," Caleb said. "Can I have some before dinner?" "After dinner." "Can I have half a piece before dinner?" He looked at Ivy. She was trying very hard not to laugh. Her mouth kept wanting to turn up at the corners, and every time it did, she pulled it back down. It was the first time he had seen her close to a real smile. "Half a piece," he said, "because we have a guest, and it's her bread, and she gets to decide." Ivy cut a piece and then cut that piece in half. Emma took it with the reverence of a child receiving a birthday present and walked very slowly, very carefully, to the couch, where she proceeded to eat it in tiny mouse-sized bites while studying it for defects. "She's a lot," Caleb said quietly. "She's wonderful." "Yeah, well, she has her moments." He started pulling things out of the grocery bag. Ivy got up and came over to the counter without being asked and began putting things away in the places she had apparently figured out during the day. The carrots went in the crisper drawer, the milk in the door, the canned tomatoes in the pantry, second shelf. She moved around his kitchen like a person testing how much space she was allowed to take up, touching things lightly, putting them back down gently, never with her back to the door. He noticed that last part, never with her back to the door. "Pass me the garlic," he said. She passed him the garlic. Their fingers brushed. She pulled her hand back fast, and then, seeing that he hadn't reacted, let out a breath and tried to laugh at herself. "Sorry," she said. You're fine." "I'm jumpy." "Yeah, I noticed. It's fine." He started chopping onions. She watched him for a second, then picked up the other knife on the block and started on the carrots without asking. He let her. There was something about the way she worked, fast, clean, her hand flat against the back of the blade the way you were supposed to do it, that told him she had cooked, seriously cooked, somewhere in her life. He didn't ask where. After a minute, she said, "Can I ask you something?" "Yeah." "Why aren't you asking me anything?" He kept chopping. "Because you'll tell me when you're ready, or you won't. Either way." "That's not normal." "Probably not. Most people ask. Most people have a story they're trying to collect. I don't." He scraped the onions into the pan. They hit the oil and hissed. "Also, my wife died almost 5 years ago. Aneurysm, sudden. One morning she was making coffee. That afternoon she was gone. For a long time after that, everywhere I went, everybody had questions. How did it happen? Were you there? Did she suffer? How's the kid?" I started to hate questions, even the nice ones, even the ones people meant well with. So I figured, if you want to tell me something, tell me. If you don't, I'm not going to pull it out of you. She had stopped cutting the carrots. "I'm sorry," she said. "About your wife." "Thank you. I didn't know." "How would you?" He took the carrots from her cutting board and slid them into the pan. "It's been a while. I don't talk about it much. Emma was 20 months old. She doesn't really remember her. She's got pictures and stuff." Ivy was quiet. Sarah, Caleb said. Her name was Sarah. I don't say it a lot. It's still, he shook his head. It still does something, to say it out loud. Sarah, Ivy said gently, like she was holding the name carefully so as not to drop it. He looked at her. Yeah. They cooked the rest of the meal without saying much. Emma wandered in twice, once to complain that the TV remote had eaten a battery, once to ask if Ivy would braid her hair later because Daddy was bad at braids, which was not a criticism, just a fact. Ivy said yes. Ivy's eyes were a little shiny when she said it. Caleb pretended not to notice. Dinner was rice and chicken and the carrots and warm bread with butter that Emma would not stop raving about, as though she had not, in her short life, been eating butter basically every day. Ivy ate more than Caleb had expected, though not much. A small plate, slowly, like someone who had forgotten how to be hungry and was having to remember. She drank 2 glasses of water. She told Emma, when Emma asked, that she did not have a cat but had once, when she was a little girl, had a cat named Benjamin who had been black with 1 white foot. What happened to him? Emma asked, because Emma asked that kind of thing. He got old, Ivy said, and then he went to sleep. Oh. Emma thought about this. My mom got old and went to sleep too. The silence at the table was immediate and complete. Ivy went very still. Caleb set his fork down. Bug, he started. It's okay, Daddy. I know she didn't get old. I just mean she went to sleep like Ivy's cat. That's what you said. That's what it was like. Yeah, Caleb said. His voice had gone thick without his permission. Yeah, that's what it was like. Ivy reached, very slowly, and put her hand on top of Emma's on the table. Emma looked at the hand, then up at Ivy, and didn't pull hers away. I'm sorry about your mom, Ivy said. It's okay. I have Daddy, and Mr. Palm, and now I have you. That's almost as much. Caleb got up and went to the sink. He turned the water on. He did not turn around for a minute. He pretended to be rinsing a plate. He was not rinsing a plate. When he came back to the table, his eyes were dry, mostly, and Emma was explaining to Ivy the entire hierarchy of stuffed animals in her room, of which there were apparently 11, with Mr. Palm at the top and a stuffed crab named Gerald at the bottom, because Gerald had a bad attitude. Ivy did the dishes. Caleb tried to stop her. She said, Please, let me do one thing. And there was something in her voice that made him step back and let her have it. She washed every dish by hand, even though there was a dishwasher 3 feet away. She dried them. She put them back exactly where she had found them. He gave Emma her bath. He read her 2 books, the Bear Hat book and the one about the duck who wanted to be a mailman, and tucked her in. He stood in her doorway a little longer than usual. When he came back downstairs, Ivy was sitting on the couch with the lamp on, her hands in her lap, looking at the dark window. He sat in the armchair. He didn't say anything. His name, she said, is Marcus Blackwood. Caleb did not know the name. He could tell from the way she said it that he was probably the only person in 3 states who didn't. He owns a company, she went on, Blackwood Holdings. They do real estate mostly, commercial. He's got offices in Chicago, Dallas, down in Miami. He's been in some magazines. She laughed, but not like anything was funny. There's a picture of him online at a charity thing, holding a checkup. He's got this gray suit on. He looks like a man you'd trust with your mortgage. That's what he looks like to the world. Okay. I met him 3 years ago. I was 23. I was working at a gallery in Chicago. Not a fancy one. The kind of place where you're basically the receptionist and also you hang the paintings and also you sweep the floor. I was taking night classes. I was trying to be a person, just figuring out who I was going to be. She pressed her hands flat against her thighs. He came in one day. He bought 4 pieces. He asked if I'd be the one to deliver them, to help hang them in his apartment. I said yes because my boss said to say yes. A week later, he asked me to dinner. I said no. A month later, he asked me again. I said yes. Why? She looked at him. Because he was charming. Because he remembered my name. Because he remembered everything. The color of the shirt I'd worn the day we met. Which painting I'd liked best out of the 4 he bought. He sent flowers to my apartment, and the note wasn't his handwriting, but it was in his voice, And he said things like, I know it's early, but I want you to know you're already rare to me. I was 23. I had a dad who didn't call me back. I had a mom who'd been dead since I was 11. I had a crappy apartment and a loud boss, and no one had ever paid attention to me like that. Nobody. Caleb nodded, slow. That's how it starts, she said. That's always how it starts. They pay attention. She was quiet for a moment. It was 3 months before he hit me the first time. Caleb kept his face still. He had promised himself upstairs in Emma's doorway that whatever she said tonight he would keep his face still. It was a Sunday. We'd been at a thing, a fundraiser, I think, a gallery thing. I had talked to a man, some artist, maybe 60 years old, about his work. That was the crime. That was what I had done. We got home and he didn't say anything in the elevator, and I knew. I already knew. By then I already knew the elevator was bad. He waited until we were inside and he took my face in his hand like this. She put her own hand up to her own cheek, fingertips spread, thumb under her jaw, a grip. And he said, very quietly, You humiliated me tonight. And then he hit me. With the back of the same hand. Not hard enough to break anything, just hard enough that I saw, you see those stars people talk about. Cartoons. I always thought that was made up. It's not made up. Bada. Ivy. And then he cried, she said. That was the worst part. He cried for an hour. He was on his knees on the rug. He held my ankles. He said he didn't know what had come over him. He said he loved me more than he had loved anyone. He said he would never, ever do it again. And God help me, I believed him. I wanted to believe him. Because the alternative was that I had let a monster into my life. And I was too stupid to have seen it. And I wasn't ready to be that kind of stupid yet. She stopped. I'm sorry, Caleb said. Quietly, meaning it. He did it again 8 weeks later, and then again, and then it was just a thing that happened, like the weather. I moved in with him. I stopped working at the gallery because he didn't like me being around the other men there. I stopped taking the classes because he said it was a waste of money, his money, because by then everything was his money. I had a phone he paid for, a car he paid for, clothes he bought, friends. He didn't like my friends, so the friends went away. It's not that it happens all at once. That's the thing people don't understand. It's like a room that keeps getting smaller. Every week the walls come in an inch. You don't notice. And then one day you wake up and you can't turn around. She looked at her hands. I tried to leave 8 months ago. He found me in 2 days. He had somebody find my phone. He had somebody find my sister in Ohio, who I hadn't talked to in 2 years, and he sent her a basket of fruit with a card. Just a fruit basket. From Marcus. My sister called me crying and asked what I had gotten myself into. That was the message. He wanted me to know that there was nowhere I could go, that he couldn't touch somebody who mattered to me. Jesus, Caleb said before he could stop himself. So I went back, and I stayed for another 8 months. I got better at not making him angry. I got good at reading a room, at reading him. I got so good at it I forgot I was doing it. It was how I lived. She took a breath. 3 days ago, he broke my phone across my face because somebody had texted me and he didn't know who, even though it was just the dry cleaner telling me my order was ready. He locked me in the bedroom for the night. He went out. I waited. I waited 2 hours to make sure he wasn't coming back. Then I took the emergency cash he keeps in the safe in the closet, $800. And I took a bag with some clothes. And I climbed out the bathroom window onto the balcony and down the fire escape, in my nightgown, with bare feet. I took a bus to Indianapolis, then another bus, then another. I wasn't going anywhere. I was just going. I got off in a town called Brickton, about 40 miles from here, because there was a man on the bus who kept looking at me and I got scared. I walked. I got rides. Last night I got a ride with a trucker who was decent, who dropped me at the edge of Millhaven and gave me $20 and told me not to tell anyone he'd picked me up. I started walking. It started raining. I saw your porch light. I knocked. She stopped. The room was very quiet. The heater clicked on. You didn't slip on a curb, Caleb said. No. That cut on your eyebrow. That was the phone. Yeah. You have other... He stopped. I'm sorry, that's not my business. You're the first person who's asked, she said, and her voice finally broke on it. Just a little, just enough. You're the first person in 3 years who's asked. He didn't move towards her. He had learned, over the course of the day, that moving toward her fast was a bad idea. He just stayed in the armchair and leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. Ivy, I want to ask you one thing, and I want you to answer me honest. Is anyone going to die because you're here? Does he know this address? She shook her head. No, I swear to you, I threw the burner phone in a gas station trash can before I got to your street. The one I have now I bought with cash this morning while you were at work, from a different gas station, using a different name. I don't have any social media. I haven't touched my old phone, my old email. Nothing. I've been careful. Okay, but he's going to look. He's going to hire somebody. He always does. It's not going to be today. It's not going to be this week. But it'll happen. Eventually, somebody will find somebody who saw a girl on a bus, and then, I don't know. That's why I kept moving. That's why I was going to keep moving. I wasn't going to stay here. I don't want to stay here, Caleb. I don't want to do to you what this is going to do. You're not doing anything to me. I am. I'm telling you right now with my whole chest that a rich and angry man might show up at your house looking for me. And you have a daughter upstairs. Caleb looked at the floor for a long moment. Yeah, he said. I know. So you need to... Let me think. She stopped. He got up. He went to the window and looked out at the dark street. Everything was quiet. The streetlight on the corner was buzzing, the way it always buzzed. A cat crossed the road and disappeared under the Hendersons' porch. I had a cousin, Caleb said, still looking out the window. Her name was Diane, my mom's sister's kid. She was older than me by maybe 9 years. When I was 10, she moved in with us for a summer because her husband had broken her nose. I didn't know that at the time. I was a kid. I just thought Diane was visiting. She had these sunglasses she wore in the house. I thought she was a movie star. My mom would make her tea in the afternoon, and they'd sit on the porch and not say anything for hours. That's what I remember, just my mom and Diane sitting on the porch, not saying anything. He turned around. When I was 16, my mom sat me down and told me the real story. Not because I asked, because she wanted me to know. She said, a woman shows up at your door someday, you open it. You open it even if you don't know her. You open it especially if you don't know her, because that's how the world keeps from eating itself. I remember thinking it was a weird thing to say. I was 16. I didn't get it. He looked at Ivy. I get it now. She put her hand over her mouth. I'm not a cop, he said. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not rich. I'm a guy who works at a lumber yard and does bookkeeping on the side and drives a 10-year-old truck. I don't know what I've got to offer you, except a door that locks and a bed that's yours for as long as you need it. But you have that. You have it as long as you want it. You hear me? Caleb, you hear me? I hear you. Good. He went to the kitchen. He came back with a glass of water. He set it on the coffee table in front of her. Drink, he said. You look like you forgot to today. She picked up the glass. Her hand was shaking again. She drank it in 3 swallows, put it down, and pressed the heels of her hands against her eyes. I don't know what to do with kindness, she said. I forgot what to do with it. I'm sorry. I keep thinking you're going to turn. I'm not going to turn. Everybody turns. I know it feels like that. But I'm telling you now, and I'm not going to say it a lot because I don't want to be the guy who keeps saying it. There's no version of this where I put you back on the street. Okay? That's not one of the options. I took that off the table when I locked the door last night. She nodded. She couldn't talk for a minute. He let her not talk. Eventually she said, I should sleep. Yeah, you should. Caleb? Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. The next 5 days slipped by in a rhythm that didn't feel like it should have been possible. Ivy slept 12 hours the first night, then 10, then 8. She started getting up when Caleb got up, making coffee, packing Emma a little bag with a sandwich cut into triangles and a sliced apple and a note that said different things on different days. Have a brave day. Mr. Palm says hi. You're a good kid. Emma saved the notes in a shoebox under her bed. Caleb found them one evening when he was putting away laundry, 6 of them already, lined up like playing cards. Ivy didn't leave the house. She wouldn't even go in the backyard. "Not yet," she said, when he suggested she get some air. "Give me a little more time." She read through every book on his shelves. She reorganized the pantry without being asked, which Caleb pretended to mind and didn't. She fixed the loose knob on the bathroom cabinet with a screwdriver she found in the junk drawer. She taught Emma how to make scrambled eggs on Sunday morning, standing behind her at the stove with her hand over Emma's hand on the spatula, and the eggs were rubbery and Emma ate every bite like they were gold. Caleb watched her getting stronger in small ways. She stopped flinching when he closed a cabinet. She started laughing at things Emma said, real laughs, short and startled, like they were being jolted out of her. She ate full meals. She started holding her shoulders back instead of curled forward. On the fourth day, she came down in the morning in a sweatshirt of his that wasn't just something she had grabbed to stay warm, but something she had chosen. An old gray one from a lumberyard in Ohio where he'd worked in college. And she said, "This is my favorite one, by the way. I'm claiming it." And something in Caleb's chest did a strange small flip, and he didn't examine it. He was not a man who examined things a lot. He had learned in the last 5 years that some things, when you examined them, fell apart, and some things only held together if you let them be. On the 6th day, he came home from work late because the yard had been slammed and he'd stayed to help Dale close up. It was past 7. The sky was black. The kitchen light was on, warm and yellow, and through the window from the driveway he could see Ivy and Emma at the table. Ivy had a pencil in her hand. Emma had a pencil in her hand. They were drawing something. Emma was saying something that made Ivy laugh, and Ivy was throwing her head back a little when she laughed, and her hair, which Caleb had only seen wet or pulled back before, was loose on her shoulders. He sat in the truck for a minute and just looked at his own kitchen window, at the two of them in it, and he realized he was holding his keys so tight the metal was cutting into his palm. He did not have a word for what he was feeling. It wasn't happiness. It wasn't relief. It was something closer to terror. The exact feeling he had felt the day he had held Emma for the first time in the hospital. The realization that something had just become so valuable to him, that the world had sharpened around it, that he now had something new to lose. He went inside. "Daddy!" Emma shouted. "We're drawing our family." He bent down to kiss the top of her head. "Yeah, show me." It was a picture of 4 figures. Stick figures, big heads, crooked smiles. Emma in the middle, Caleb on one side, Ivy on the other. And on the far left, a figure with long hair and a halo of yellow crayon. "That's Mommy," Emma said. "She's watching. She likes Ivy." Ivy was looking down at the picture. Her pencil was very still on the paper. Caleb's throat closed up for a second. He cleared it. "That's a really good picture, Bug." "Ivy did most of it." "I helped with the sun," Ivy said quietly. "The sun is the best part," Emma said, loyal as a dog. Caleb sat down at the table. He looked at Ivy across from him. She looked up at the same time, and something passed between them that neither of them named, and neither of them looked away from for maybe 2 seconds, and then she smiled. A real smile, the first full one he had seen, and it was like somebody had turned a light on in a room he hadn't realized was dark. "Long day?" she asked. "Long day. I made stew. You're going to ruin me." "That's the plan." Came out before she thought about it. He saw her register it, saw her eyes widen slightly. But then she just held his look for a beat longer, and her smile stayed, and she didn't take it back. That night, after Emma was asleep, they sat in the living room again. But this time they weren't talking about Marcus. They were talking about nothing, about a movie Ivy had loved when she was 17, about the summer Caleb had worked on a fishing boat in Alaska between his junior and senior year of college, about Emma's teacher, Mrs. Wellman, who apparently did not understand the concept of indoor voices. At some point, Caleb got up to check the locks. He did this every night now since Ivy. He checked the front door, he checked the back door, he checked the sliding door to the patio. He came back into the living room and Ivy was standing by the window, pulling the curtain slightly aside. "Caleb," something in her voice. He crossed the room fast. She was looking out at the street. A black sedan was parked under the streetlight 2 houses down. Not one he'd seen before. The engine wasn't running. The windows were tinted. As they watched, the tip of a cigarette glowed orange inside the car. Someone was sitting in it, watching. Ivy had gone white. "How long has it been there?" Caleb asked quietly. "I don't know. I went to close the curtains. I just saw it. They stood there. The cigarette glowed again. Go upstairs, Caleb said. Get Emma. Put her in my bed. Don't turn any lights on. Take your phone. Caleb, go. Now. Please. She went. Caleb stood at the window, not touching the curtain, just watching. His heart was beating too hard in his ears. He made himself count the way his dad had taught him to count when he was a scared kid. 1 potato, 2 potato. Because counting made the panic go somewhere. The car sat there for 4 more minutes. Then it pulled away from the curb. Slow, no headlights, drifted to the stop sign at the corner, and turned right. Only then did the brake lights come on. Caleb let the curtain fall back. His hands were shaking. Upstairs, he could hear Ivy's voice, soft and steady, reading something to Emma in the dark. A made-up story. Something about a girl and a rabbit. He stood in his own living room, in his own house, and he understood very clearly that the quiet life he had spent 5 years building was already over. Had been over the moment he opened the door. He just hadn't known it yet. He went to the phone on the kitchen wall, the landline he'd kept for emergencies, for storms, for the kind of night when cell towers went down. And he dialed his brother Will's number from memory. Will picked up on the 3rd ring. It's almost 11. Man, this better be good. I need your help with something, Caleb said. I need you not to ask me a lot of questions about it until I can come see you. Can you do that? There was a pause. Yeah, Will said. Yeah, I can do that. You okay? Caleb looked up at the ceiling, toward the sound of Ivy's voice still murmuring upstairs. Not really, he said, but I will be. Will came over the next morning at 7:30, which was early for him. He was the kind of man who ran a body shop and kept his own hours, which meant he didn't answer a phone before 10 unless somebody had died. He knocked the family knock, Tashek, 3, pause, 2, and stood on the porch in a canvas jacket with his hands in his pockets. And when Caleb opened the door, his brother looked past him into the house and then back at him and said, Is she still here? She's upstairs with Emma. They're getting ready for school. Okay. You want coffee? I want an explanation, but I'll take the coffee while I wait. Caleb let him in. Will was 2 years older and ran hotter in every way. Quicker to laugh, quicker to anger, quicker to form an opinion he'd stand behind whether or not he'd thought it through. But he was also, underneath all of it, the most reliable man Caleb had ever known. Will had been the one who'd driven 6 hours the night Sarah died, and stayed for 3 weeks without ever being asked, sleeping on the couch, doing dishes, taking Emma for walks in the stroller at 5 in the morning, so Caleb could sleep without knowing she was crying. They sat at the kitchen table. Caleb told him. Not all of it. He kept Ivy's actual words to himself, because those belonged to her, but enough. The knock in the rain, the cut over her eye, the name she'd finally said out loud, the car last night with the cigarette. Will listened without interrupting, which was not his usual way. When Caleb was done, Will looked at his coffee for a long moment, then looked up. Marcus Blackwood. You know him. I know of him. Everybody who pays attention to that kind of thing knows of him. I did a job once on a Range Rover that belonged to one of his guys. Paid cash. Didn't want a receipt. Told me to forget his name. Will rubbed his jaw. He's not somebody you want in your driveway, Caleb. I know. Do you? I think I do. Because if she's telling you the truth, and I'm not saying she isn't, then what's sitting upstairs in your house is a problem that doesn't go away because you want it to. This isn't a guy you apologize to. This is a guy who will destroy your life in small pieces and enjoy it. I know, Will. Do you? It wasn't a question this time. Caleb held his brother's look. I know what kind of man he is. I know what he did to her. I'm not going to put her back out there. Will exhaled. He rubbed the back of his neck. Okay. Then I'm helping you. I'm not arguing with you. I just need you to have heard me say it out loud. So later, if this goes bad, you can't tell me I didn't. Noted. I'm going to put a camera on your porch today. Actually, 2. One on the porch, one pointed at the street. You're going to put a motion light on the back door. You're going to start parking the truck under the side window instead of the driveway, so it's harder to see who's home. Okay. And you're telling Emma's school. Not the whole story. Just that there's a person who is not allowed to pick her up, not for any reason, and if anybody but you shows, they call you and they call the cops. You get the photo of this guy off the internet, and you show it to whoever runs the front desk. Okay. And Ivy needs to see somebody. Not a friend, not you, a lawyer, a real one. There's a woman in Harrisburg who does this kind of work, handles these. Will waved a hand, searching for the word, these rich guy domestic things. She's good. She's expensive. I'll cover it. Will. I said I'll cover it. Don't make it weird. Caleb didn't push. Will didn't make offers he wanted to be argued with. Footsteps came down the stairs then, the fast double thump of Emma, followed by the careful single tread of Ivy. And Will's face did that thing it did around kids, softening without him knowing it. Emma came into the kitchen in her school clothes, her hair in a braid that was maybe the best braid her hair had ever held, and shouted, "Uncle Will!" and ran into him without slowing down. "Hey, Bug." Will caught her, hoisted her, spun her once. "What are you, 70 pounds now? You're a moose." "I'm 51. That's what you think. I can tell with my arms. I'm a scientist with my arms." Emma giggled. Then over Will's shoulder she saw Ivy standing in the doorway and said, with the easy pride of a 6-year-old, "Uncle Will, this is Ivy. She lives here now." Caleb's coffee went down the wrong pipe. Ivy said, "Emma." "Well, you do. You sleep here and eat here, and that's what it means." "Hi," Ivy said to Will, flustered. "Hi, I'm Ivy. I'm sorry. I'm not—" "Nice to meet you, Ivy." Will set Emma down and stuck his hand out like a regular person, like there was nothing weird happening, and Ivy took it. "Heard a lot about you in the last 12 hours. My brother's a terrible gossip." Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm intruding. You're not intruding. You're standing in a kitchen. It's fine." Will glanced at Caleb. "I'm going to run to the hardware store. Caleb, you take the kid to school. I'll meet you back here in an hour with the stuff we talked about." "Okay, Ivy." Will turned back to her, and his voice dropped into something quieter. "My brother's made a call. We're going to help. You don't need to do anything today except keep doing whatever you've been doing. That's the job. Just don't run. Don't decide to protect him from this by leaving. That's not a kindness. That's actually the worst thing you could do to him. You hear me?" Ivy's eyes filled. She nodded. "Good." Will squeezed Caleb's shoulder on his way out. The door closed behind him. The kitchen was quiet for a second. "I'm sorry," Emma said, picking up on tension the way she always picked up on it. "Was that wrong? What I said?" "No, Bug," Caleb said. "That wasn't wrong. Eat your toast. We're running late, Tuss." He dropped Emma at school and did exactly what Will had told him to do. He sat at the little desk in the front office and talked to a woman named Mrs. Park, who had been running that office since Caleb was in 3rd grade and had known Caleb's mother. And he told her, keeping his voice level, that there was a man, a dangerous man, who under no circumstances was to be allowed onto the school grounds or to pick up his daughter. He showed her the photograph he had pulled off the internet that morning. Marcus Blackwood in a gray suit, holding up a charity check, smiling the kind of smile that looked like it had been practiced in a mirror. 40-something, dark hair going silver at the temples, handsome in the way that made him forgettable, like every 3rd man in every boardroom in the country. Mrs. Park looked in the picture for a long time. "I'll photocopy it," she said. "I'll put it at every door, and I'll tell Principal Garza. Is there a restraining order?" "Not yet." "Get one." "Yes, ma'am." She reached across the desk and patted his hand. Her hand was old and dry and soft. "Caleb, you were a good boy, and now you're a good man. If you ever need anything, I know. I mean it." "I know, Mrs. Park." He made himself walk to his truck. He made himself breathe evenly on the drive back. When he got home, Will was already there with 2 grocery bags of hardware, and Ivy was on the couch with a notepad. And she looked up at him as he came in, and he could see that something had shifted in her overnight. She was sitting up straighter. There was a small, hard line to her mouth that hadn't been there before. "I called that woman," Ivy said. "The lawyer. Your brother gave me the number. She can see me Thursday." "Okay. I'm ready, Caleb. I want to do this. I want to stop running." "Okay. Good. I just need you not to—" She shook her head, frustrated. "To be the one to decide anything for me, okay? I know you want to help. I know you're trying, but I've spent 3 years being managed. I can't let somebody manage me again, even kindly. Does that Is that okay? He looked at her, really looked. He saw that the thing underneath the fear, that banked fire he'd noticed the first night. It was closer to the surface now, cleaner. Yeah, he said. That's okay. You drive. Thank you. You don't have to thank me for that. That's yours. That's not something I'm giving you. She nodded. Her eyes shone. She didn't cry. She had stopped crying easily, he noticed. That was one of the things getting stronger in her. Will came in from the porch with a drill. Hate to interrupt, but I need somebody to hold the base plate. Coming. They spent the morning putting up cameras and lights. Will muttered the whole time, the way he muttered while he worked, about how cheap the brackets were and how nobody made anything right anymore. Ivy brought them coffee. At noon, Will left. Caleb sat with Ivy at the kitchen table, and they looked at each other over empty cups, and neither of them said the thing they were both thinking, which was that the house felt different now. Fortified. Watched. That was the cost of what they were doing. Locks that hadn't needed to exist had to exist. The car didn't come back that night. Or the next. By Thursday morning, Caleb almost let himself believe he'd been wrong about it. That it was some neighbor's boyfriend, some lost driver checking his phone, something, anything, other than what he knew in his bones it had been. Ivy went to the lawyer's office in Harrisburg. Caleb drove her. He sat in the waiting room and read a 3-year-old magazine about bass fishing while Ivy was behind a closed door for an hour and 40 minutes. When she came out, her eyes were red, but her back was straight. Her name is Renata Osman, Ivy said in the car, buckling her seatbelt. She said I have a case. She said it's a strong one, actually. She said he made mistakes. She said he always makes mistakes with women like me because he assumes we're too scared to ever open our mouths. What mistakes? Text messages, voicemails, things he sent me, things he sent other people about me. One of his assistants is apparently a woman. He also... Ivy stopped. She swallowed. She's willing to talk. Renata already knows her. She's been trying to build a case against him for 2 years. She says I'm the one who could make it stick because I'll testify. She says I would be the one who finally... Her voice broke. Caleb reached over without looking and put his hand flat on the console between them, palm up. She put her hand in his. He didn't squeeze. He just let her have it there. They drove for 10 miles like that, his hand and hers on the console, the highway a blur on either side, and neither of them said a word, and neither of them let go. 3 days later, on a Sunday afternoon, Caleb was in the garage rotating the tires on the truck, and Emma was on the driveway drawing with sidewalk chalk, and Ivy was out in the front yard for the first time since she'd arrived, standing in the grass in a coat of his, her hands jammed in the pockets, her face tipped up to the weak autumn sun. She'd been out there maybe 20 minutes. He kept looking up to check on her. She kept looking at him and smiling a small private smile, like she knew he was checking. A car turned onto Sycamore. Caleb registered it before he understood why. A dark sedan, slower than the speed limit, windows tinted. It rolled past the house once. It kept going. It turned around at the end of the cul-de-sac. It came back. Ivy had seen it too. She was already walking toward Emma. "Bug, come here," Caleb said, stepping out of the garage, wiping his hands on a rag. "I'm drawing a dragon." "Emma, come here, right now." His voice did something to Emma's face. It made her drop the chalk and come, fast, the way he'd taught her to come when something was wrong. Ivy got to her a second before Caleb did. Ivy scooped her up. Emma said, "What's happening?" And Ivy said, "It's okay, honey. It's okay. We're going inside," in a voice that was remarkably steady for a woman whose hands Caleb could see were shaking. The sedan stopped at the curb in front of Caleb's house. The driver's door opened. Marcus Blackwood got out. Caleb knew it was him before he saw the face because of the suit. Gray. Perfectly tailored. On a Sunday afternoon, on a residential street in Millhaven, on a day where every other man on the block was in sweatpants or flannel, the suit was the tell. The suit said, "I am not of this place. I do not belong to your rules." He was taller than Caleb had expected, thinner. His hair was neater in person than in photographs. He was smiling. He was smiling like he had stopped by to drop off a casserole. "You must be Mr. Ryder," Marcus Blackwood said. Caleb did not answer. He had stepped without thinking between Blackwood and the porch, between Blackwood and Ivy, and Emma, who were almost at the door. "I was hoping I could have a word," Blackwood said. "Just a few minutes of your time, man to man. You need to leave." "I understand your position. I do. I'd feel the same. But I've come a long way, and I think if you heard me out, you'd see—" "I said you need to leave." Blackwood took a step forward. Just one. Testing. "There's been a misunderstanding," he said, his voice pitched lower now between them. Ivy is not well. She gets this way. She has episodes, Mr. Ryder. She's done this before. She took things from my home, a significant amount of cash. She's made accusations in the past that, when examined, didn't hold up. I'm not saying this to embarrass her. I'm saying this because I'm worried, and I think you, as a father, would want to know if someone you'd let near your daughter was unstable. Caleb heard the door close behind him. Ivy had gotten Emma inside. He didn't turn to look. He kept his eyes on Blackwood. "You're lying," Caleb said quietly. "I'm really not. I can show you. I have documentation. I've seen her face. I've seen the cut you put over her eye with a phone. I've heard her cry in my house at 2 a.m. You can have all the documentation in the world. I'm going to believe the cut." Blackwood's smile did not move. It did not get smaller. It did not get bigger. It just stopped being a real smile, if it had ever been one, and became something more like a painted-on thing. "Mr. Ryder, I don't think you understand who I am." "I know exactly who you are." "I don't think you do. I think you do because you've been filled with a particular story for, 2 weeks now? 3? But I assure you, I have resources. I have friends in this state. I can make your life and your daughter's life very complicated, Mr. Ryder. Or I can get in my car and drive away and none of us ever speak again. Ivy comes with me. Nothing happens to you. We go back to Chicago. This ends. You get your quiet little life back. Everybody wins." The front door opened behind Caleb. Ivy came back out. Caleb turned, just his head. "Ivy, no, go back inside." "I'm not going inside." Her voice was clear. It was not shaky. It was not even scared. It was the voice of somebody who had made a decision in the last 30 seconds that she had been walking toward for 3 years without knowing it. She came down the steps. She stopped at Caleb's shoulder. "Marcus." "Ivy, sweetheart, don't call me that. Don't call me anything." "You're not well, Ivy. You have to know that. You ran. You took money. I took $800 from a safe in a closet in an apartment that I lived in for 3 years. The furniture, the rugs, the cars, the clothes, the jewelry, you keep all of it. I don't want any of it. I took $800 because you broke my phone across my face and locked me in a bedroom, and I was going to need to eat on the way out." Blackwood's expression flickered, just for a second. The painted smile slipped an inch. "We had a fight. Couples—" "No, stop. That's not what that was. And you know it. Ivy." His voice dropped, softer, warmer, the voice Caleb recognized from Ivy's account of Sunday nights on rugs. "I know I've made mistakes. I know I have. And we can talk about those. We'll go to counseling. I'm not going anywhere with you. You don't belong here, sweetheart. Look at this place. Look at this." His hand gestured, faint, at Caleb's small yard. The chalk on the driveway. The porch with the flickering bulb Caleb still hadn't changed. "Look at what you've settled for. A man you don't know. His child. A life you'd be trapped in inside of 6 months. I can give you— You know what I can give you. Remember what I remember all of it. That's the problem. I remember all of it, including the parts you think I don't." Blackwood looked at her. His face did the smallest thing, a tightening at the corners of the eyes. And for one fractional second, Caleb saw him. The real one. The one underneath the suit. The one who hit a woman in an elevator and cried on a rug for an hour because he had been told, somewhere along the way, that crying after you hit somebody made you the one who had been hurt. "You are making a mistake," Blackwood said, very quietly. "I've made a lot of mistakes," Ivy said. "This isn't one of them. You need to go. You need to get in your car and drive away from this house and not come back. If you come back, I'll have the police here before your tires stop turning. I already have a lawyer. I already have documentation. I already have—" Her voice wobbled, just once, and she steadied it. "I already have your friend from the office. The one you thought would never say anything. She's saying something. Blackwood went very still. "Diana," he said. "I don't need to tell you her name. You just told yourself." A long silence. The wind moved through the maple in the front yard and a few leaves came down. Somewhere down the street, a dog started barking. The cigarette smell from the sedan reached Caleb on a breath of wind. "You have no idea what you're doing," Blackwood said. His voice had gone flat. The warmth, what little of it there had been, was gone. "You have no idea what this will look like by the time I'm done. When I'm finished, there won't be a person in Chicago who'll hire you, rent to you, or take your call. I will make you a ghost, Ivy. I will make you a story people tell at parties. And this," he turned his eyes, finally, to Caleb. This man here, with the kid who just saw you through the window, is going to have his entire life go through a wood chipper because he couldn't keep his door closed on a Tuesday night." "Get off my property," Caleb said. Blackwood held his eyes for a long moment. Then he laughed, a short, amused laugh. He shook his head like a man who had just watched somebody make a very stupid bet. He turned. He walked back to the sedan. He got in. The door closed with the soft, heavy sound expensive doors made. He did not peel out. He did not rev the engine. He pulled away from the curb at exactly the speed limit, and he turned the corner at the end of the street, and he was gone. Caleb realized, after the car was out of sight, that Ivy had grabbed the back of his jacket somewhere in the middle of it and hadn't let go. He turned. She was standing very close to him. Her face was white. "I did that," she whispered. "You did that. I said it. I said all of it. Out loud." "Yeah, you did." She let out a single sob. Just one. She pressed the back of her hand against her mouth. He pulled her in. Not a big gesture. He just put his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned against his side, and she breathed for a minute, rough and uneven, against his shirt. Behind them, the front door cracked open, and Emma's small face appeared in the gap, watching, scared. "Daddy?" "We're okay, Bug. We're coming inside." "The man left?" "The man left." "Is he coming back?" Caleb looked down the street. Empty, quiet. A neighbor was raking leaves 4 houses down. "I don't know, Bug." "Ivy." "I'm okay, honey," Ivy said, lifting her head. "I'm okay. I was scared for a minute, but I'm okay now. Come here." Emma came out barefoot onto the cold porch and wrapped her arms around Ivy's legs. And Ivy's hand went to the top of her head the way hands did when they were doing something without being told. Caleb stood behind them both and looked at his quiet street and thought, this is just the beginning of it. He was right. It started 2 days later, on Tuesday, with a story on a local news website. Not the real paper, not the Millhaven Gazette, but one of those content farms that scraped court records and spit out articles with a lot of words in bold. Ivy Lane, formerly of Chicago, accused of grand theft from prominent businessmen. Suspected mental health episodes. Authorities seeking to locate. There was a photograph of her, clearly pulled from a private source. Ivy at a restaurant, smiling, holding up a glass of wine. She looked beautiful in it. She looked happy. The caption read, "Lane before her alleged breakdown." Ivy read it at the kitchen table with Caleb looking over her shoulder. She didn't cry. She didn't even look surprised. She just sat there. "He's starting," she said. "Yeah. This is how he starts." The next day there was a second article on a slightly more legitimate site, more carefully worded, no photographs, that quoted an unnamed source close to Blackwood saying that he was heartbroken and fearful for Ivy's safety, and that all he wants is for her to come home and get the help she needs. It ran on a Wednesday. By Thursday, it had been picked up and reposted across a dozen other sites, each one shaving off a little more context, each one getting closer to the version Blackwood wanted. Unstable woman, long-suffering partner, sad and dignified man in a gray suit. Renata Osman called. She told Ivy not to respond. Not publicly, not privately, not to anybody. Let him build the story. His story will get dumber. Ours will get stronger. Hold. Ivy held. She stopped reading. She made Caleb stop reading. She said, "I'm not letting him into this house twice a day on my phone." But the stories kept coming, and people started seeing them. Wednesday night, Caleb went to Henderson's auto to do the books, and Hank Henderson, who had been his neighbor growing up, who had cried openly at Sarah's funeral, looked up from the counter when Caleb walked in and said, "Caleb, can I talk to you a minute?" "Yeah." Hank waited until his last customer was gone. Then he said very quietly, "I'm going to be honest with you. I had a guy in here today asking about you, about the woman living at your place. He was polite, but he wasn't from around here. He had pictures. He had, I don't know what to call it, a story. He said she was dangerous. He said you had a kid in there. He wanted to know if I'd be willing to do." Hank shook his head. "I told him to get out. I told him I'd known you since you were 6 years old, and if I heard he was asking anybody else in this town, I'd come find him personally. I wanted you to know. Thank you, Hank. I'm on your side here, Caleb. I don't know what's going on, but I'm on your side. You need anything, you ask." Caleb drove home that night and did not tell Ivy. He told Will instead. Will said, "It's going to get worse," and Caleb said, "I know." And they sat on the porch for a while in silence, with the motion lights coming on every time the wind moved a branch. By the end of the week, the stories had become something meaner. An anonymous account on a gossip site posted photographs. Where had they been taken? How had they been taken? Of Ivy walking out of the grocery store in Harrisburg after her second meeting with Renata, head down, hand over her face. The caption said, "Caught. Ivy Lane in hiding." Someone else dug up her sister in Ohio. Her sister called, crying, asking what to do. Ivy told her, "Don't say anything. Don't talk to him. Don't talk to reporters. I'm so sorry." Someone slashed the tires on Caleb's truck Friday night in the lumberyard parking lot. All 4 of them. He had to call Will to come get him. Will looked at the tires and didn't say anything, and then, when they were in Will's truck driving home, he said quietly, "He's letting you know he knows where you work now." "Yeah." "Have you thought about sending Emma to Mom's for a while? Every hour. But if I do that, he wins. That's the whole thing. If I start shuffling my kid around to hide her, then I've agreed he's bigger than I am. Then I'm teaching Emma that this is the world. I'm not going to do that." Will didn't argue. He just drove. The worst came on Saturday morning. Caleb opened the front door to get the paper and found, sitting in the center of the welcome mat, a manila envelope with his name on it. No stamp, no address. Somebody had walked up to his porch in the night and left it there. Inside was a stack of photographs. They were of Emma. Emma at school. Emma getting off the bus. Emma in the grocery store with him 3 weekends ago. Emma at the park. Close-up shots. Good camera, telephoto. They had been taken over at least 2 weeks. At the bottom of the stack was a small white note card with a single line of neat typed text. "Such a beautiful kid. It would be a shame if anyone cared too much." Caleb's hand shook so badly he had to set the envelope on the kitchen counter and walk away from it. He walked to the sink. He gripped the edge of the counter. He put his forehead against the cabinet above the sink, and he breathed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Upstairs, he could hear Emma laughing at something. Ivy was reading to her from a book about a mouse. He walked out the back door into the cold morning and stood on the patio and called Will. Will said, "I'm coming. Don't move. Don't do anything. I'm coming." Will came. Renata came. The photographs went into an evidence bag. The note card went into an evidence bag. Renata made 3 phone calls while standing in Caleb's kitchen, her voice going lower and harder with each one. And when she hung up the 3rd time, she said, "Okay, we're moving. I'm filing for the emergency order on Monday. We're petitioning for a full restraining order. We're filing the criminal complaint. We're bringing in Diana, the assistant, the one you mentioned, and we are going into that courtroom and we are taking him down. This man just made the biggest mistake of his life. He threatened a child in writing. In writing, he finally did something even his money can't fix." Ivy was sitting at the kitchen table. Her face had gone past white into something gray. She was staring at the wall. "I didn't want him to go near your daughter," she said, "not to anybody specifically. I didn't want Ivy." Renata's voice was sharp. "Look at me. Look at me. This is not your fault. This is his choice. He crossed a line that means he's done. You understand? He thought he was scaring you into coming back. What he actually did was hand us a weapon. We are going to put him in a room he cannot walk out of, okay?" Ivy nodded. She did not look like she heard it. Emma came downstairs then, in her pajamas, the mouse book under her arm. She looked at the faces around her kitchen. She was 6, but she was not stupid. "Why is everybody sad?" she asked. Caleb went to her and picked her up. She was almost too big to pick up anymore, but he did it anyway, and she let him. He held her against his shoulder. She put her cheek on his shirt. "Bug," he said, "we're not sad. We're getting ready." "For what?" "For a big, boring grown-up thing that I have to do. In a place with a lot of chairs." "Okay." She accepted this the way she accepted everything. "Can I have waffles?" "Yeah, Bug, you can have waffles." Over her shoulder, across the kitchen, his eyes met Ivy's. Ivy was still sitting. She had her hands flat on the table. She was looking at him, and he saw in her face the thing he had been waiting to see. The thing under the fire, under the fear, under everything. The thing that had been buried so deep in her that it had taken 3 weeks in his house to surface. She wasn't going to run. Not anymore. Not from Blackwood, not from a courtroom, not from anything. She was going to stand there and say it, and she was going to mean every word. And Caleb, holding his daughter with one arm and steadying himself with the other, understood that he was going to be standing behind her when she did. The weekend bled into Monday the way bad weekends did, slow and heavy, with nobody sleeping quite right. Renata filed the emergency order Monday morning at 8:30, and by 11 a judge in the Harrisburg County Courthouse had granted it, which meant that somewhere in Chicago, a process server was walking into Marcus Blackwood's office with a piece of paper that said, in plain language, that he was not permitted within 1,000 feet of Ivy Lane, Caleb Ryder, or Emma Ryder, and that a hearing for a permanent order would be held in 4 weeks. 4 weeks. That was the distance now. That was the runway. The criminal complaint took longer. Renata was working with a prosecutor in Cook County, a woman named Grace Halverson, who had apparently been waiting 3 years for a witness like Ivy and was not going to rush the filing because she was not going to lose it. Diana, the assistant, Diana Reyes, it turned out, 31 years old, worked at Blackwood Holdings for 6 years, had come in the previous Thursday with her own lawyer and given a full statement. She had photographs of her own. She had emails. She had a recording on her phone from a hotel room in Miami 2 years ago that Renata told Caleb he would, one day, hear a piece of in a courtroom, and that he should prepare himself for because it was not something he would forget. Caleb did not ask to hear it. He did not need to. What he did instead was become a man who watched the street. He did not sleep through a full night the whole of those 4 weeks. He learned the sound of every car on Sycamore, which ones were the neighbors, which ones were the paper route, which ones were the garbage truck on Thursday mornings. He learned the rhythm of his own porch, when the motion lights were tripped by a cat, when by the wind, when by something worth standing up for. He changed the porch bulb, finally. He changed the locks on all 3 exterior doors. He bought a second phone and gave it to Ivy so she could have one that was never out of her hand. He showed Emma how to dial 911 on the kitchen phone and had her practice 3 times. Emma did not ask why. Emma had gotten quieter in that week, the way kids got quiet when they understood something they were not yet supposed to understand. Blackwood, for his part, stopped sending envelopes. He did not call. He did not drive past. The photographs of Emma and the note card had been a miscalculation, and he had figured that out the moment Renata's office phoned his lawyers on Saturday afternoon. Now his strategy shifted. He went to ground legally and went louder publicly. There was a new article every other day. A carefully placed quote in an industry publication. A story about Ivy's supposed history of instability that appeared, of all places, in a national magazine's online culture section. The kind of article with a sympathetic tone and a lot of weasel words that did its real damage in the comment section, where strangers Ivy had never met were suddenly experts on who she was. One of the articles dug up a 3-year-old photograph of her at a gallery opening in Chicago, laughing, leaning into Blackwood's shoulder. The caption was engineered to imply she had been happy right up until some recent, unexplained break. The subtext was, "What changed and why should you believe her?" Ivy read one of them on the second Tuesday, despite her own rule, despite Renata's advice. Caleb came home from the lumberyard to find her sitting at the kitchen table in the dark, her laptop open in front of her, her face wet. He closed the laptop without looking at it. He turned on the small lamp over the stove. He sat down across from her. "I told you not to," he said. Not angry, just quiet. "I know." "Why'd you read it?" "Because—" She wiped her face with the back of her wrist. "Because I wanted to see what people were saying. I wanted to see how bad it was. I wanted to, I don't know. I wanted to know what I was going to have to walk into on the day. And she laughed. It was a small, hopeless laugh. And it's bad, Caleb. It's bad. They think I'm crazy. They think I'm a gold digger. There's a woman I went to high school with. I haven't talked to her in 10 years. She left a comment saying I always had problems. She doesn't even know what I'm accused of. She just saw an article and decided to say I always had problems. 10 years I haven't talked to her. And Ivy, I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have. Hey, look at me. She looked at him. You know who's not on the internet? Who? The judge. The jury, if there is one. Grace Halverson, Renata, Diana Reyes, the 12 people in a room who are going to decide this thing. They are not reading comments. They are going to read documents, and they are going to look at photographs, real ones, medical ones, and they are going to hear you and Diana and maybe me say, under oath, what we know. That's the room that matters. Not the comments section of a magazine, not some woman you knew in 10th grade. I know. Do you? I do. She put her hand on her chest. I just needed to hear it. Then I'm telling you, again, as many times as you need to hear it. You want me to write it down? I'll write it down. I'll tape it to the fridge. That got a real laugh out of her. Short, surprised. Her shoulders came down. Don't tape it to the fridge. Emma will read it and ask questions. Fair enough. She reached across the table and put her hand over his. He looked down at it. Her nails were short and uneven. She had bitten them almost to the quick sometime in the last 2 weeks. And he hadn't said anything. And she hadn't said anything, but it was a fact between them that she was grinding her teeth down to something to get through this. Caleb. Yeah. When this is over. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. They were both doing the thing they had been doing for about 10 days now, which was starting sentences neither of them was ready to end. When this is over, if this goes the way, after the hearing. Small seedlings of a future being put down in careful, half-articulated rows. Yeah, he said. I know. The hearing fell on a Wednesday in late October. Ivy wore a gray sweater and dark pants that Renata had told her to buy. Juries and judges read clothes before they read people. You're going to be boring, and you are going to be believable, and you are not going to wear anything he ever gave you. And she had her hair pulled back in a low knot, and no makeup except a little under her eyes because she had not slept, and she knew it. She looked young. She looked tired. She looked like a woman who had spent 3 years being afraid and had decided on her own to stop. Caleb drove her. Will drove behind them in his own truck with Emma because Emma was going to Caleb's mother's for the day and he was not letting Emma out of the family's sight. Ivy did not talk on the drive in. Caleb did not push her to. She looked out the window and worked her jaw and twice put her hand on the door handle like she was considering, very briefly, getting out at speed. Hey, Caleb said the second time. We're still going. I know. You don't have to be brave yet. You just have to be in the car. Okay. At the courthouse there were reporters. Not many. This was not national news, not yet, but enough that they had to walk through a knot of 5 or 6 people with phones and cameras held up, voices asking questions Ivy did not answer. Renata met them at the top of the courthouse steps and put her body between Ivy and the cameras like it was nothing, like she had done it before, which she had. Renata was 40-something, short, broad-shouldered, had a voice that carried without ever getting loud. Caleb had decided somewhere around the second week that he would walk through a wall for this woman. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than Caleb had imagined courtrooms were. The wood was darker. There was a smell that was somewhere between old paper and floor polish. There were fewer people than he had expected. Some staff, a bailiff, Grace Halverson, and 2 men at the prosecution table, Renata and Ivy at the plaintiffs, and across the aisle 3 attorneys in very good suits. And at the end of the row, at the defendant's table, was Marcus Blackwood. He looked thinner. His suit was still perfect. His hair was still neat. But he looked thinner, and when Ivy walked past his table to her seat, he did not look up. That was the tell. A month ago, he would have turned his whole body to look at her. He would have smiled that painted smile. Now he kept his eyes on a legal pad in front of him and drew small, tight circles with a pen. and Caleb understood with a certainty that settled somewhere in his chest like a stone that Blackwood had finally, maybe for the first time in his adult life, realized he was going to lose. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Everyone sat. The hearing was, in its specifics, not the kind of dramatic thing Caleb had been bracing for. It was slow. It was full of technical language. Renata walked through the photographs, the hospital records from a visit Ivy had made to an emergency room in Chicago 14 months ago under a false name, the text messages, the voicemail transcripts. Diana Reyes took the stand for 45 minutes and spoke carefully, precisely, with her hands folded in her lap, and said things about Marcus Blackwood that were so specific, so located in particular rooms on particular nights, that the three lawyers at the defendant's table stopped looking at each other by the end of it. When Diana stepped down, she walked past Ivy and did not look at her. Could not, Caleb saw. But her hand, passing the edge of the plaintiff's table, brushed Ivy's shoulder for one fraction of a second, and Ivy's eyes closed. And then Renata called Ivy. Ivy stood up. She walked to the stand. She put her hand on the book. She said, "I do." Her voice did not shake. She sat. Renata said, "Ms. Lane, could you describe for the court, in your own words, the nature of your relationship with Mr. Blackwood?" And Ivy began to speak. Caleb, sitting in the second row, had heard almost all of it before. In his living room, late at night, at his kitchen table, on his back porch. But he had never heard it like this. Not performed, not polished, but said out loud in a room with a record being kept, said for the first time in 3 years in a voice that was not apologizing for itself. She talked about the gallery. She talked about the 4 paintings. She talked about the Sunday after the fundraiser, the elevator, the rug. She talked about the 8-week cycle that became a 4-week cycle that became no cycle at all. She talked about the phone breaking, the bedroom door locking, the $800 from the safe, the fire escape in bare feet. She cried once. Once. When Renata asked her, "Why did you stay?" and she opened her mouth and didn't say anything for 8 seconds, and then she said, "Because I forgot I was a person you could do that to. He convinced me I was the kind of person you could do that to. And by the time I remembered I wasn't, I was too tired to run." She said this, and then she pressed her hand over her mouth for a moment, and then she took her hand away and kept going. Caleb found he was gripping the bench in front of him so hard his knuckles were white. Will, beside him, put a hand on his back. Caleb did not let go of the bench. Blackwood's lawyer cross-examined her for over an hour. He was good. He was smooth. He tried to catch her in small inconsistencies, tried to make her lose her temper, tried to paint the picture his client had been paying for. The unstable woman, the unreliable narrator, the partner who had made accusations before. Ivy held her ground. When she didn't know an answer, she said so. When she was asked a leading question, she asked for it to be rephrased. When he tried to twist her language, she took her time, a full breath, sometimes 2, and gave him the answer in her own words. Renata had rehearsed her, yes, but what was happening on that stand was not a rehearsal. It was a woman who had been underground for a long time finally surfacing. The hearing did not end that day, or the next. It ran 3 days, with a pause on Thursday for a medical witness and a recess on Friday afternoon for legal arguments Caleb did not understand. On Friday at 4, the judge announced she would be issuing her ruling on the permanent restraining order the following Monday morning, and Grace Halverson, rising from the prosecution table, formally announced the charges being filed in Cook County against Marcus Blackwood: assault, battery, unlawful imprisonment, 2 counts of witness intimidation. The list was long enough that by the end of it, Blackwood had gone very still at his table, and one of his lawyers had put a hand on his arm like he was physically restraining him from standing up. When the gavel came down for the recess, Caleb turned to look at Ivy. She had her head in her hands. Not crying, not yet, just holding herself, as if she were afraid of flying apart. He waited for her at the back of the courtroom. Renata walked her out to him. Ivy crossed the last 5 feet on her own and walked straight into him and put her forehead against his collarbone and stood there breathing. "I did it," she said. "You did it." "I did it, I did it, I did it. Yeah, I'm so tired, Caleb." "I know, honey, I know." He had not meant to call her that. He did not even realize he had until it was out. Her head came up slowly, and she looked at him, and he looked back at her, and whatever expression was on his face made her eyes fill and her mouth do something complicated. Let's go home, she said. Yeah, let's go home. They walked out of the courthouse together, Will ahead of them clearing a path, and the reporters were still there, and the questions still came. And this time Ivy did not duck her head. She kept her face forward. She did not smile. She did not speak. But she did not hide. She walked past them like a woman going home from a job. In the truck, heading west out of Harrisburg with the afternoon sun turning the cornfields on either side of the highway into long panels of gold, she leaned her head against the window and fell asleep. Actually asleep, her mouth slightly open, her hand loose in her lap, the first real sleep Caleb had seen her take in weeks. He drove carefully. He did not turn on the radio. He did not hit the brakes hard at the stop signs. He drove like the truck was carrying something precious, which he guessed, all things considered, it was. Monday morning, the judge issued the permanent restraining order. It was granted in full. Blackwood was ordered to stay 1,000 feet from Ivy, from Caleb, from Emma, from their home, their workplaces, Emma's school, and any vehicle they owned. He was prohibited from contact in any form, electronic, written, through intermediaries, through hired parties. Violation carried criminal penalties. The ruling ran 15 pages. Caleb read it twice. He did not fully understand the legal language, but he understood the shape of it, which was that a woman in a black robe had sat in a room with Marcus Blackwood and had decided that Ivy was telling the truth, and he was not. It was, as far as Caleb could tell, the first time in Ivy's life that an authority figure had looked at her and looked at Blackwood and picked her. Ivy cried when she read it. Really cried, for the first time since she had arrived in his house. She sat on the couch with the pages in her lap, and she cried for almost 20 minutes straight, and Caleb sat next to her and didn't say anything and didn't try to fix it. He just let her do it. Emma came in at one point, took one look, climbed up onto the couch, and put her small arms around Ivy's shoulders from the side, and pressed her cheek against Ivy's hair, and said nothing. They stayed like that for a while. The three of them on the couch, the papers in Ivy's lap, the afternoon light coming in through the window. I think, Ivy said finally, her voice hoarse, I think I need to start. She stopped. She wiped her face. She tried again. I think I need to start figuring out what my life looks like now. Not running from it, not hiding in it, an actual life. Caleb looked at her over Emma's head. Yeah, he said. I think that's probably right. I've been here almost 5 weeks, Caleb. Yeah. I need to earn money. I need to pay for my own lawyer. I don't know what I need, but I need to start figuring it out. Not tomorrow, but soon. Okay? Is that okay to say? It's the best thing you've said since the day you walked in. Her eyes filled again. Not sad this time. Something else. I'm not leaving, she said. I'm not saying I'm leaving. I'm saying I need to be a person in this, not a guest. Emma, without lifting her head from Ivy's shoulder, said into the sweater fabric, I vote yes. You don't get a vote, Bug. I always get a vote. Ivy laughed, wet and tired. She turned her head and kissed the top of Emma's hair, a quick, unplanned kiss, the kind of thing a person did without thinking when they had stopped being afraid of the moves their own body made. Caleb watched it happen. He did not say anything. He just watched the two of them on his couch in the slanting October light, and he understood quietly that whatever the life was that was going to come next, it was already here. It had been here for a while. They were all just finally home enough in it to notice. The criminal case took almost a year to come to trial. That was the part no one warned Ivy about. Not Renata, not Grace Halverson, not the half-dozen other women she eventually met through a support group in Harrisburg who had walked, in their own ways, the same long path. A civil order could be granted in a week. A criminal case was a slower animal. It ate months. It ate holidays. Ivy and Caleb spent that first Thanksgiving together at his mother's house, with Emma wearing a paper pilgrim hat she had made at school, and Ivy beside Caleb at the big dining table, and Caleb's mother clasping Ivy's hand in both of hers at the door and saying only, I'm glad you're here, without making it into anything bigger than that. Christmas came. New Year's came. Emma turned 7 in February. Ivy turned 27 in April. And through all of it, the case ground forward in Cook County. A deposition here, a motion there, 2 delays Blackwood's lawyers paid for with the kind of money that bought you time, but not, in the end, acquittal. In the meantime, Ivy did what she said she would do. She got a job at a coffee shop in Millhaven 3 days after the restraining order came down. A place on 4th Street called The Birch, run by a tired woman named Joanna, who paid a little under the table for the first 2 weeks because Ivy didn't have her paperwork in order, and Joanna didn't ask. After that, it was above board and hourly and not enough to live on. Not really, not by itself, but it was her money. Ivy opened a checking account at the credit union downtown and put her first paycheck into it, and then sat in her car for 20 minutes afterward and cried. Not bad crying, Caleb learned when she told him that night. Some crying wasn't bad. Some was the body finally releasing what it had been carrying. She got a second job in the spring at the county library, 2 evenings a week, shelving books and helping with the children's hour on Saturdays. She started taking a class at the community college in Harrisburg, 1 night a week, toward the degree she had stopped chasing at 24. Art history, she decided, because that was what she had loved before anyone had told her she shouldn't. Her professor turned out to be a 60-year-old woman who wore the same blue cardigan every class and who, 3 weeks in, told Ivy her first paper was the best she'd read in 2 years. And Ivy walked out of that building and called Caleb from the parking lot and said, "Somebody saw me. Somebody saw me without him being in the room." Caleb had to pull the truck over. He sat in a gas station lot off Route 9 and listened to her tell him what the woman had written in red pen on the back of her paper. And he thought about all the red pens that should have been in Ivy's life already, and weren't, and were finally starting to be. In June, she moved out. She had been talking about it for a month, and Caleb had known the whole month that it was the right thing. It did not stop being hard. There was a small second-floor apartment above a dentist's office 3 streets over, a 1-bedroom with a bad stove and good light, and the rent was cheap enough that Ivy's 2 jobs could almost cover it, and Caleb covered the gap without saying he was covering the gap, and Ivy figured out he was covering the gap and let him, because by then they had both learned what kinds of help were allowed to stay help and what kinds turned, after a while, into something else. The day she moved, Emma cried. Not a tantrum, a real cry, the kind that came up from a place a 7-year-old did not have words for. "You're leaving," Emma said. She was standing in the empty bedroom with her arms wrapped around her middle. "I'm not leaving, honey. I'm moving 3 streets over." "That's the same." "It's really not. Look at me. Hey, look at me." Ivy knelt down on the bare floor. "You know my phone number. You have it memorized. You call me whenever you want. I'm going to be at your school pickup twice a week because your dad has lumberyard on those days, remember? I'm going to see you so much you're going to get sick of me. That's a promise." Emma did not look convinced. "You're leaving because you don't want to be here anymore." "No, that's not—" "Honey, no. I'm leaving because I want to know I can. Because for a long time somebody told me I couldn't live by myself, and I believed him. And I need to know I don't believe him anymore. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Emma sniffled. "No." "Okay, I'll try again. When you're a big kid and you're, 13 and you want to ride your bike to the store by yourself for the first time, that's not because you don't love your dad. It's because you need to know you can. That's what this is. This is my big kid bike ride." Emma thought about that. She wiped her nose on her sleeve. "Is Daddy going to be sad?" Ivy's voice caught. "Your dad knows the difference between sad and proud. I think he'll be both, but mostly proud." And from the doorway, where he had been standing for longer than either of them had known, Caleb said, "Mostly proud. She's right." He had not cried since Sarah. Not really. Not where anybody could see. He did not cry now either. But something in his face did something close to it, and Emma saw it, and Emma came across the room and put her arms around his leg the way she used to when she was 3, and he put his hand on her head and he did not move for a minute. That night, after the last box was in the apartment, and the apartment key was on Ivy's new key ring, he drove home with Emma asleep in the passenger seat, and a silence in the truck that was, he realized, somewhere around the bridge over Miller's Creek, not an empty silence. It was a held silence. It was the silence of a life that had been a certain shape for years, and was now a different shape, and the difference was going to take some getting used to, but not in a bad way. More like a room you had just painted. You kept walking into it and being surprised by the color. Bus seat. He saw her almost every day. She came over for dinner on Sundays. She picked Emma up from school on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they did their homework at the kitchen table in the apartment, and she fed them grilled cheese and cut up apples, and once, famously, a batch of cookies so bad Emma still brought them up a year later as an insult. They went to the park together. They went to the movies. They went out to eat, the three of them, at the diner on 5th, where the waitress eventually stopped asking for their order because she knew. Burger for Emma, patty melt for Caleb, grilled chicken salad for Ivy, 3 Cokes, one of them lemon. He kissed her for the first time in September, on the porch of his house, after a long evening of nothing special. Dinner, dishes, Emma in bed, a glass of wine on the step. They had been sitting on the porch a while. The crickets were going. Ivy's head was on his shoulder in the easy, considered way it had come to be there sometimes. And when she lifted it to say something, her face was very close to his, and she stopped. She didn't move back. She looked at him, and for the first time in his life with her, Caleb did not ask what she needed. He just leaned forward, slow enough that she could have turned her head away, and kissed her. She kissed him back. She kissed him back for a long time. When they pulled apart, she put her forehead against his. "I've been waiting for you to do that for about 4 months," she said. "I didn't want to. I know what you were doing. I know why you were doing it. But I'm telling you now, you don't have to be so careful with me anymore. I'm not going to break." "I know." "Say it again. You're not going to break." "Good, don't forget." The trial ran 9 days in mid-October. Caleb drove to Chicago with Will for 3 of them. Ivy testified again, and this time it was not a hearing, it was a trial. And the room was bigger, and the jury was 12 people Ivy did not know, and the stakes were larger in every direction. Blackwood's defense was the one they had all expected, that Ivy was unstable, that she had exaggerated, that any violence had been mutual, that Diana Reyes was a disgruntled former employee with a grudge. The defense threw everything at the wall. It did not stick. Diana's recording was played in open court. It was 30 seconds long. Caleb had not listened to it in advance, and he was not prepared for what it did to a room. There was the sound of a man's voice, Blackwood's, unmistakable, lower than it sounded in public, flatter, saying things to a woman in a Miami hotel room that Caleb did not ever want to have to describe to another human being. There was the sound of a hand striking skin. There was the sound of a woman saying no. There was the sound of him laughing. Then the recording ended. A juror cried, a male juror, the foreman, later. Blackwood took the stand in his own defense against his lawyer's advice. It went badly for him. He could not, it turned out, maintain his practiced charm under a prosecutor who had been preparing for him for 3 years. Grace Halverson walked him, line by line, through his own text messages, his own voicemails, his own corporate emails instructing employees to surveil Ivy, and in one extraordinary exchange, to remind her what she owes me. She did it without raising her voice. She did it without flinching. She made him into something small in front of 12 strangers, not by shouting, but by making him explain himself in his own words, until his own words were all anyone could see. The jury was out for 4.5 hours. It was not long for a case like that. When they came back, Ivy reached for Caleb's hand. He held it. The foreman read the verdicts. Guilty on 4 of the 6 counts. Not guilty on 2, some minor procedural things, Renata explained later, things that would have been hard to prove regardless. But guilty on the ones that mattered. Guilty of the assault. Guilty of the unlawful imprisonment. Guilty of the witness intimidation. Blackwood went to prison. Not for life, but for enough years that by the time he came out, Ivy would be in her late 30s and would have lived an entire other life between then and now. His company lost contracts. His name went, as he had once threatened to do to Ivy, through its own particular kind of wood chipper. There was a coda 8 months into his sentence, where he tried through his attorneys to reach out to Ivy, and offered settlement, a civil sum, in exchange for a statement softening her public version of events. She did not respond. Renata did, in a single paragraph, and the attorneys did not try again. Ivy did not celebrate the verdict. She thought she would. She had imagined many times what it would feel like to hear the word guilty read out loud in a room where Blackwood had to hear it too. In the moment, what she felt was not triumph. It was a quieter thing, closer to exhaustion. It was the feeling of setting down, finally, an object that had been so heavy for so long that her arms had forgotten what it was like not to carry it. She cried in the hotel room that night, a long, slow cry that was not about him. It was about the 3 years she had spent as somebody she was not. It was about the 23-year-old girl who had said yes to dinner, who had let a man remember the color of her shirt. It was a cry for that girl, for everything that girl did not know and had not deserved. Caleb held her. He did not tell her it was over because it was, and it wasn't. You did not close a door on a man like Marcus Blackwood. You just learned to live on the other side of it. Ivy knew that. Caleb knew it too. They stayed up late in that hotel room and talked, quietly, and eventually ordered bad room service fries that they ate sitting cross-legged on the bed like teenagers. And Ivy made a joke about something that wasn't really funny and laughed at her own joke. And Caleb laughed too. And the laugh went on a little longer than the joke deserved, because sometimes you laughed longer than a thing deserved just to prove to yourself that you still could. There is a version of this story, Caleb thought later, where he was the hero of it, where a good man opened a door in the rain and saved a woman. He had read enough books and seen enough movies to know that was one of the shapes a story like this could take. It was not the shape of theirs. In the shape of theirs, Ivy saved herself. She had already been doing it when she knocked on his door. Walking away from that apartment had been her doing. The fire escape had been her climbing. The 3 buses had been her riding. What Caleb had done was answer a door. It was not nothing. But it was not the whole thing. And he learned, over the slow years that followed, not to let anyone, including himself, pretend it was. What he had done, the actual thing, was harder to name. He had kept his door open without making her pay rent in gratitude. He had believed her the first night, and the second night, and every night after. He had been, when she needed it, a wall to stand behind. And when she didn't need the wall anymore, he had stopped being the wall without making it into a loss. He had, he came to understand, learned the difference between loving someone and owning them. That difference, it turned out, was most of the work of being a person. Marcus Blackwood had never learned it. Most of the men he'd grown up watching. And he included in this some of the men he had loved, men whose flaws had been dressed up as devotion, had never learned it either. Caleb had learned it once, imperfectly, with Sarah. He got a second chance to learn it with Ivy. He did not always do it well. He was not always patient. He snapped sometimes, about stupid things, a dish in the wrong cabinet, a conversation he had heard 3 times, a night he had wanted to watch a game and instead wanted to sit on the porch with her. He was a man, not a saint. He forgot things she had told him. He got jealous once of a man at her job, and it was not his finest hour. He apologized clumsily, badly the next morning. She made him do it twice. He did it twice. That was the shape of it, not smooth, not the glossy version a person might have imagined from the outside, but real, which was the only kind of thing worth having. They got married on a Saturday in May, 2.5 years after the night she had shown up at his door. It was a small thing, a backyard in his mother's yard. Will in a suit he hated. Emma, 9 years old by then, in a dress she had picked herself, bossing the photographer around. Ivy's sister came in from Ohio, and they had spent the year before mending what 3 years with Marcus had broken, which meant long phone calls and one big tearful weekend in a cabin and a slow, real rebuilding that neither of them took for granted. Ivy wore a pale green dress because she had decided, she told Caleb once, that she was never going to wear white for anyone. White was for other people's idea of what a woman was supposed to be. Her hair was loose. She wore flat shoes. She walked out across the grass to stand next to him, and she was laughing before she even got to him because Emma was making a face at the officiant behind his back. Caleb did not make a speech. He was not a speech kind of man. What he said, when it was his turn, was, "I didn't know I was going to get another life. I didn't think I was supposed to. I'm going to try not to waste this one." And Ivy, when it was her turn, said, "You opened the door. That part you did. The rest of it I'm doing on purpose. And I'm going to keep doing it on purpose, every day, for the rest of our lives." And Emma, who had not been scheduled to say anything but had prepared remarks anyway, stepped forward in her self-picked dress and said, "Very seriously, I'm very happy about this, and I want everyone to know I called it first." And the whole yard laughed, and Ivy pulled Emma into a hug so tight that Emma's feet came off the ground for a second. There is a thing people say about stories like this one, about the rain and the stranger at the door. They say it was fate. They say it was meant to be. They say that 2 people broken in just the right way can find each other and be whole. I don't think that's what happened here. I think a tired young woman climbed out of a bathroom window because she was brave, and a tired young father opened a door because his mother had told him, when he was 16, that you opened the door even if you didn't know who was on the other side, even if especially then. I think a little girl with a one-eared rabbit taught her father and a stranger how to start a meal together, because a child can sometimes build a family faster than any adult by the simple act of not being afraid of one. And I think the real ending of this story is not the verdict, and not the wedding, and not even the quiet evenings on that porch years later when Emma was off at college and Caleb and Ivy were still there, in the same house, on the same step, watching the same streetlight that used to buzz until the city finally replaced it. The real ending is that a woman who had been taught she was small learned she was not, and a man who had decided his life was over learned that it wasn't, and a child who had lost a mother gained someone who was not her mother and did not try to be. And between the three of them, they made something that had not existed before. Love, real love, does not arrive like a rescue in a storm. It arrives like a door. Someone has to knock. Someone has to open it. Both of them have to keep choosing to walk through it, on the ordinary Tuesdays, on the bad mornings, on the years when nothing is dramatic and nothing is rescued, and the only test is whether you still make the other one coffee. They kept choosing. That, in the end, was the whole story.